What mind-blowing but simple facts would satisfy a 4-year-old daughter's daily request for one fact before bedtime? Most people have more than the average number of arms. I was like, oh, a troll comment, but then I realized some people have less than 2 arms, making the average less than 2. Nice one. Every male does. A day on Venus takes longer to complete than a year on Venus. How? It simply takes longer for Venus to do one complete rotation around its own axis than it does for the planet to rotate around the sun. Edit. From my memory, I believe it's only like 10 to 15 days difference, but still an interesting fact. Another fun fact is aluminum used to be such a precious metal and so expensive that the top point of the Washington Monument is made of pure aluminum. At the time of construction, that aluminum would be about like capping it with platinum today. Napoleon ate with an aluminum spoon and had his guests use gold ones. Or was it bronze? I don't remember. Cashews come from a fruit. The fruit is edible but apparently hard to transport long distances. So the only places you're likely to find it are where cashews are grown. They also don't grow inside the fruit. They're on top of it like a sort of ridiculous hat. Edit. Not on top, underneath. My bad. Either the fruit is the ridiculous hat, or the nut is either a set of testicles, or, as somebody below me said, a massive dump. Edit. Wow, gold! Thanks a heap! Also, the outside of the cashew shell is toxic, but they use the shell parts to make brake fluid for vehicles. The juice is super common here in Brazil. Funnily, I was drinking a glass while browsing this topic. Eating the fruit is a lot less common because it's astringent and acidic, but I used to like it as a child. P.S. It's curious to me that the nut is so much more famous than the fruit in other countries, because I don't enjoy it half as much as the juice. Not that people don't eat it here, they sure do, as topping for ice creams, salted as a snack, etc. Can confirm. Spent a couple of weeks harvesting them. Has to be done by hand, which is why they're so expensive. You have to or should wear thick rubber gloves because the fruit juice is an irritant, especially when exposed to sunlight. They're not picked directly from the trees, but allowed to over-ripen and fall to the ground. So they're all nice and sticky and covered in biting ends. Then you have to twist the nut off. It's pretty labor-intensive. A Siamese cat's fur color is dependent on its body temperature. That's why the colder areas of the body, such as the nose, paws, and tail, are darker than the rest. Most elephants weigh less than a blue whale's tongue. I guess I'm 4 because I'm loving all the fun facts in this thread. Also, elephants are the only living land mammals that are unable to jump. Bees tell their friends about good nearby flowers by dancing. And if you feed them cocaine, they will exaggerate the amount of flowers and sometimes say they've found flowers when they actually haven't, just like humans. Probably not suitable for a 4-year-old, but it's cool to know we're not so different to bees. This has been widely exaggerated and propagated. The bees don't use any kind of body language to communicate with each other, and instead are just rubbing the scent of the flowers into each other. The movements are totally arbitrary and unrelated to any message. Nectar is sugar water, and when sugar water gets too warm, it turns into the same funny juice that daddy drinks. When bees drink too much funny juice, they forget how to fly properly, a bit like how daddy forgets how to drive properly, and they're not allowed back into the hive, a bit like how daddy's not allowed to drive. If they keep trying to get into the hive, the other bees bite their head off. Hippopotamus milk is pink. Some fish cough. Don't eat too many carrots or your skin will turn orange. That happened to my own daughter. Some frogs will glow when they eat fireflies. Before 1913, parents could mail their kids to grandmas through the postal service. Male seahorses carry the baby in their tummy instead of the mommy. Babies. Lots of them. I have a friend who is a trans man. He's also a teacher. He recently had a baby that he carried himself. His students dubbed him a seahorse. Lobsters were considered disgusting and low-class food to the point that feeding them to prisoners too often was considered cruel and unusual punishment. Also, they're basically just big sea roaches. I was once bartending and an extra lobster was cooked. One server was curious to try it, as she'd never had lobster. She came from the Midwest. This was in the Northeast. And she asked us to describe it. My manager walks over and says, imagine a giant cockroach that lives at the bottom of the ocean and eats nothing but rotten meat and trash. Server gets grossed out, tries a tiny bite and goes, ew, it tastes like dirty groundwater, and leaves. Manager looks at me and says, more for us, buddy. I was in eternal gratitude. The distance from your inner elbow to your wrist is the same as the length of your foot. This one is fun because it sounds insane. The forearm looks longer. But if you put your foot to your arm, you see that it's accurate. If you put both hands in front of you and air write a word, your non-dominant hand will write an exact mirror of your dominant hand without you having to think about it. It will work with shapes too if she's too young to write words. Pineapples used to be so expensive that people would rent them as a centerpiece for their party. Scotland's national animal is a unicorn. A single strand of spaghetti is a spaghetto. At birth, a baby panda is smaller than a mouse. Violin bows are usually made from horsehair. The color red doesn't make bulls angry. They are colorblind. Herringfish communicate with flatulence. If you heat up a magnet, it loses its magnetism. It snows metal on planet Venus. Garlic attracts leeches. In 1992, a shipping crate full of 28,000 rubber ducks fell off a ship. They kept washing up for years. Edit. You thought I was gonna say thanks for the silver and gold. Edit. But seriously, thank you for the silver and gold. Hey, my big book of useless information might finally come in handy. The sleepiest mammals are armadillos, sloths, and opossums. They sleep roughly 80% of their lives. The jump rope dates back to around 400 years ago, when Egyptian children would jump over vines. People used to make little circuses with fleas. It started around 14th century Asia, but peaked in popularity in 16th century Great Britain. Pennies were introduced in 1787, and more than 300 billion pennies have been made. Now there is about 150 billion pennies, enough to wrap around the earth 137 times. There are only about 9,043 pennies. One sold for $112,500 in 1999. One of the founders of this coffee empire was a fan of the book Moby Dick and wanted to name the company after the story's fabled sheep Pequod, but they settled instead on naming the company after the ship's first mate, Starbuck. Male lions sleep 23 of the 24 hours in a day. And, on average, they fuck 20 times a day. If they're only awake for an hour, that hour must be really stressful. My experience telling my 4-year-old an interesting fact. Someday the sun is going to burn out. Panics. The sun is going to burn out? Don't worry, it won't happen until long after you get old and die. Panic intensifies. I'm going to get old and die. Don't worry, your mother and I will be dead long before that. A picture of a pineapple field. They don't grow like coconuts do. That sharks can become 300 years old. that not all bacteria are bad and some live in and on us and protect us. The cats can imitate bird sounds. Australia made the biggest coin in the world currently. It is made of 1 ton of gold, and the value won the coin is 1 million Australian dollars. Today, 1 ton of gold is worth about $64 million, so the coin would be worth more melted down. In China, the color red is associated with luck and happiness. Little boys used to wear pink instead of blue. Rubies and sapphires are actually the same gemstone. Rubies are only red because they contain corundum. Prehistoric horse ancestors climbed trees. In hyena families, the female is the boss. Ancient Egyptians worshipped cats. And finally, there is an island near Japan called Cat Island. People go there to pray for their cats.